everyone. Welcome back to the All That Is Empath podcast. And I kind of struggled today with what to talk about because I'm just going to be completely honest and authentic in this podcast. I have really been struggling the past week. It's been very difficult for a variety of reasons. And as most of you probably know, I'm always posting advice and what is hopefully inspiration on being mindful in the present, staying positive, finding joy in your life. Because as Tony Robbins says, what's wrong is always available, but what's right is always available as well. But this past week has really been challenging for me, and I hit a point where I felt like depression might be coming back into my life. And for those of you who don't know, I spent about 40 years of my life being depressed and finally figured out how to get to the other side of it. And it's been quite a long time, a very, very long time, that I've been able to stay positive, not fall into negativity, and stay away from the depression. And that was a significant outcome in my life, achievement, you might say. So this past week was depressing on that level to me too, because I felt like I had failed. Like, why am I sad all of a sudden? Why am I feeling down? And of course, something did happen. I knew exactly why I was feeling the way I was feeling. But the thing was, why wasn't I able to practice the things that I teach, the things that I recommend, the things that had been working for me for months and months and months? And it took me probably, I would say, the entire week to finally adjust. So that's what I want to talk about today, is basically the fact that things are not always going to be perfect. You are not always going to be happy. You are not always going to feel 100% your best. When we post all these things about being positive and choosing happiness and all these things, it's not, as some people say, toxic positivity. Because toxic positivity is when you are positive in lieu of anything and everything, and you refuse to accept reality, and you just say things are fine when they really aren't fine. That's not what all this advice is about. It's not. Because in reality, you will feel, if this is life, you're going to feel bad sometimes. You're going to experience unhappiness. You're going to experience grief. The thing that we're trying to prevent is any of these things leading to depression, and especially depression that can become chronic depression in your life. That's what we want to avoid. With all these memes we put out and the constant posting about advice about being happy and choosing joy, all of these things are little tidbits that you can put together to build a mindset that pulls you through when you have a week like I had this week. It was extremely challenging, and I'm just on the very edge of it now. I feel like I'm coming out of it. I feel like I'm almost back to my real true self. But it's taken an entire week of me just spending time alone, really going over the trauma that I experienced and trying to heal it, accept it, and move on and look at the positive. And that's been very difficult. The main important thing here, I think, what I want to say and what I want you to understand is, like I said, you're not always going to feel good. You're not always going to feel 100% you and your best self, because life is going to happen. The most important thing is that even in those days and even in that time, that you remind yourself of the things that you've been learning. Do you remind yourself that there's positivity to be found. You have to look for it sometimes, and sometimes you have to look for it really, really hard. But you can find it if you really, really look. And as I did this week, I practiced a lot of self-care. I put up a lot of boundaries. I spent a lot of time alone and to myself, just healing. And that was what I needed. And in some cases, maybe that's what you need. You know best what you need for self-care. But the important part is when you feel yourself falling into that hole. Those of you who have been like myself, chronically depressed in the past, you know that it's very easy to fall back into that pattern. And that is the most dangerous thing, because you can actually feel the descent. And as you know, once you get down there into that pit of chronic depression, it's even harder to climb out than it is to stop the slide. The slide starts happening slowly, and it is very difficult to stop, but it's much easier than getting out of the pit once you're there. So that's the most important thing, is stopping that slide into depression. And that's what I focused on this week. That's what I've been working on. And thank God, thank the universe, thank my ancestors, my family and friends, thank everything that I've managed not to slip all the way back down, because climbing out in the first place was very, very difficult. But you know what? It was a challenging week, and I don't want anyone to ever think that things are always easy for everyone. Just because I have a website on Facebook that promotes positivity and happiness and joy, and that my podcasts primarily are teaching mindset that will lend to that, that will lead away from depression and give you tools to succeed in having happiness in your life, that doesn't mean that my life is perfect and that my life never has obstacles and that I don't ever feel depressed or sad or lonely. All of these things I experience. The difference is that when I used to experience these things, they used to keep me down and hold me down. It was almost like a mire of mud, of muck that just held me down and prevented me from seeing anything good and anything positive. And I didn't have the tools to turn things around, to shift my mindset and have like a paradigm shift where I could say, okay, all of this sucks. And yes, it hurts right now, but there's something in this for me. There's something on the other side of this. So if I just stop being stuck where I'm at and I go through it, there's something on the other side that I need to learn. There's something waiting for, there's a prize at the end for me. And it may be something I need to learn, or it may be an achievement of some kind where I receive some rewards. But whatever it is that I'm going through, that's why we say going through, because you have to literally go through it to get to the other side. And once you're on the other side, everything changes. That's kind of what that means, right? You're on the other side, the environment changes. Perhaps the people in your life change. But most importantly, the emotions that you're feeling and what you'll go through at that point will be different than what you're feeling right now. So that's such an important thing to remember. And while I was, for a few days, I'll admit, I started to feel very, very down and even started to question my podcast, my page, everything. I started to question myself. Like, oh no, this was just a short, brief interim where I had these different feelings. But now look, I'm right back to, the depression and feeling bad about myself and being negative and just feeling hopelessness. And I felt that whirlwind start. It's almost like a little tornado inside of you, and all these thoughts start spinning where you're not good enough and you're just never going to be anything. You're never going to amount to anything. Don't even try. Look, you're right back where you started. You're feeling this way. you know what? You're going to. Emotions are not static. They're not always the same. You can't always feel joy. You're going to feel ups and you're going to feel downs and you're going to feel everything in between. And it just is going to depend on the hour, on the minute of the day. That's what it's going to depend on. And when we say, you know what, you can choose happiness, that is true. Sometimes you feel so down. You don't want to choose happiness. You feel so worthless that you don't even care. That's the hardest part. That's the point where you're in trouble, because if you don't care, you probably won't even use the tools that you learned to get you out of the muck. So that's why it's so very important that while you feel that tornado starting, you feel that slide and that descent into depression, that you start putting on the brakes. And no matter how long it takes, maybe you got the brakes on for a whole week, that's okay, because the brakes are on and eventually the slide will stop. But you have to put on the brakes. So you have to remember all the mindset tools we've talked about, that I've shown on my Facebook page, all the things that we learn in my program, all of these things that are going to make you successful in avoiding that descent into depression. And I felt it was really important to talk about this today since, like I said, I went through it myself this week. And it's so amazing to feel. I feel a sense of achievement, a joy that I was successful in not sliding all the way into that depression, not allowing it to take me again. I fought for it, I stood up, I fought it, and I won. And that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Like I said, it took me a week. This past week, I missed posting on my Facebook page. I always have an 8 a.m. post with hashtag Music Heals, where I spotlight one particular song that I call a power song. And that way you can play it every morning, 8 a.m., get your day started with positivity, feeling powerful. And it's always some type of motivational, inspirational song or power song for women. I didn't post any last week. I didn't get them done. And I didn't really even think about it, if I'm honest. I was so immersed in saving myself. And although that's not good on a business level, that I missed doing something that I should have done, at least, I mean, not that anyone probably expects it, but it's my thing with myself. Like that's something I feel is my responsibility that I should do, because I started doing it several months ago, and continuing it seems important to me. So I missed that week, but you know what? Here's the second most important thing about this whole lesson this week that I want to pass on to you, is that I started to feel, even as I came out of the slump into depression, I started to feel down on myself. It made coming out of the depression even harder, because I started to feel down about the fact that I didn't do some of the things I should have been doing. And I felt like I had let myself down. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I let somebody else down. Maybe there's someone out there, listening to my podcast and watching my Facebook page and wondering, well, what happened to the power song this week? Where is it? What's she doing over there? I don't know. I hope I didn't let anybody down. But the most important thing that I had to face was the fact that, you know what? I had a human experience this week that millions of people experience every day. And the most important thing ever, especially above business, is self-care. You have to take care of yourself first, or you're no good to anybody else. So I had to forgive myself for missing those posts and understand that I did the right thing. I did the thing that is my primary responsibility, my self-care, and making sure I don't fall back into that depression, making sure that I can get out of the feelings that I was experiencing, that I can go through it and get to the other side yet again and come back stronger than before. And that's what I've done. Like I said, I'm on the tail end of it. I feel it almost gone. In fact, I felt well enough to record this podcast today. I did have some encouragement from a friend of mine. I was speaking to my best friend yesterday, and I was saying to him, you know, I should do a podcast for Monday because I didn't do one last Monday, and I said before on the podcast I'm going to try to do them weekly, but not going to promise because it might be every other week depending on my schedule. So if you don't see one week, you would definitely see one the next week. And I didn't do one last week, so I definitely needed one for Monday, but I just didn't feel good enough to do something that would be worthwhile, that would be positive for you to listen to, because I don't want to come on here and obviously make anyone feel worse. The whole point of this is to help people who are chronically depressed to feel better, right? That's what I'm trying to do, especially for empaths who feel such intense emotions and go through depression so much more than the average person because they're consuming all these feelings around them. So I was saying this to him, and he said, Darlene, why don't you just actually talk about your experience? Talk about the way you're feeling and what you went through this week, because, authentically, that is what's going on. That is but it's also going to be maybe a lesson for somebody. And I don't think those were his exact words, but that's kind of what he was saying. And it made me realize, you know what? He's right. That's what I should talk about, because that's what I've experienced and that's what I'm going through, and that's authentic. And hopefully that's what you want to hear, the truth, the real authentic truth. And that's what I wanted to say today is, you know what? Nobody is perfect. You can listen to all kinds of positivity podcasts and really good mindset podcasts, or maybe motivational videos on YouTube. And I guarantee you not one of those people that are posting feel that way every single day. That doesn't make their message any less important, right? None of us are perfect. None of us, unless of course you're a sociopath and you don't have any feelings and you don't feel anything, but hopefully that's not the case. But all of us, other than the psychopath and the sociopath, feel emotions, and we're going to feel good some days, bad other days. That's normal. What's not normal is allowing it to dip you into a depression that might last years, that's going to be incredibly difficult to get out of. So that's what we're aiming for here, and you have to keep that in mind. We're not trying to do the quote toxic positivity thing where, you have to be happy all the time and, fake it till you make it, where, if you just pretend all the time that you're happy when you're really not. No. If you're in a bad place, faking it can help sometimes, because when you, for example, let's say I'm not happy and I smile, just faking it, I smile. Guess what? Just the simple act of me smiling sends signals to my brain that I'm happy. And since the brain goes, oh, she's smiling, she must be happy, it starts releasing endorphins that actually increase your happiness. So you can kind of trick your brain. So when we say fake it till you make it, that's really the only thing we're talking about. We don't want you to just pretend you're happy every single day, months at a time, when you're not happy. That is where it becomes toxic positivity. So anyway, I probably should stop there before I digress further into other topics, because that's what I tend to do sometimes, because if I feel like sometimes I don't have much to say, but then I start talking and, it just, all of this comes out and there's almost too much to say. So I'm going to leave that here today. I'm going to leave you with that message that, you know what, it's okay if you have a period of time that you need to take to yourself to shut out the world even and take care of yourself. Do the self-care that you need to get through whatever you're going through. And it's okay that you're going through it. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not different than anyone else, because guess what? Everybody goes through it. Now, there are some people who don't go through it because they ignore it and they let it fester inside themselves, and they continue to live their lives day in and day out pretending that everything's okay. And that is where people get into trouble with like nervous breakdowns and even psychotic breaks and things like that. That's very unhealthy. So if you're going through something and you're actually going through it and you're not ignoring it and you're not numbing it with drugs or alcohol, and you're allowing yourself to feel it and go through it, you will eventually come out the other side. And it's okay to be going through it. It's okay to not be happy. And that doesn't mean that, you should suddenly go out in the world and start posting negative crap on Facebook and being mean to everybody you meet. No, that's not what I'm saying. But it's okay to stay to yourself, to cocoon even if you need to, and perform the self-care that you need to get you through those emotions and out the other side. In the meantime, while you're doing that, I thankfully, very, very thankful, something I'm very grateful for, that right now I'm in the position that I can do that. I can completely isolate myself for a week at a time and not speak to anybody and not do anything except work on my healing. But a lot of people are not in that situation. And if you're not, and you have to get up and go to work every day and interact with, tons of people and, pretend that everything's okay because, you can't walk around at work with a pucker face, or crying all the time or being mean to people. That is really, really hard, and I really feel for you if you have to do that. So what I would say to you in that situation, if you're going through something, is I would schedule your self-care. I would make sure that you take breaks throughout the day. When you get a 15-minute break or you go to lunch, whether it's 30 minutes, an hour, whatever, schedule your self-care during that time so that throughout the day you're doing things for yourself to help you get through that day. And then finally, when you get home, you can work harder on the self-care and do more to hopefully relax and feel better. It's a little bit harder for you, so make sure that you're practicing things that are going to help you come out the other side. Your meditation, your affirmations, your journaling. There are tons of different things that you can do. We've talked about it before for your self-care. So thank you everyone for tuning in, for listening. I'd love to hear your opinion on what we've talked about. You can always post a comment on Facebook. You can also post a comment on Patreon. You can visit us there, or Facebook, which is just facebook.com/embattled empaths. My website is currently down because I'm working on a new version. So I had a website up for a while. I actually was happy with what it looked like, but there were some functionality problems. So I've actually switched over to a new provider, and I need to work on that site, and it's been put on hold while I worked on myself. So I apologize that embattledempaths.com is under construction right now, but it will be back soon, and I'll make sure I let you know when it is. I don't know if we'll be back next Monday, but if not, it will be the Monday after that. And as always, again, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate each and every one of you. And until next time, be blessed.